Welcome to Distantly Social with Ed Goyette, a hopefully short lived series of interesting conversations with people from all over the world.
That's good. My guest today, and I'm really excited to have her on, she is a filmmaker, a sociologist, and an author. She's going to talk to us today about her new film that's coming out that she's working on called The Power of Connection. Welcome, my good friend Isabel Hunt. How you doing, Isabel?
Thank you so much for having me, Ed. I am
Oh,
doing great. It's kind of cold out, which is very unusual, but it's
where are
been
you?
great.
Where are you coming from today?
Midwest, Indianapolis, Indiana. So the normal weather would be in the 60s. We have a high of 48.
Well, welcome from the great state of New Hampshire. So you're working on this film, and that's how we kind of got to know each other. I saw some of your posts, and it really intrigued me, the power of connection, and especially with everything we're going through this time. Just run us through. Tell me about the film.
It was a crazy idea because even though I now can call myself filmmaker, I have not had any experience in filmmaking. I never even touched a camera. And I didn't even know what to do and how to do it. But as soon as I made the decision that this is something that I need to do to really expand my work about spiritual and philosophical awareness in terms of emotions and self-awareness, I put all of it together. My husband made that suggestions like, well, why don't you work on a short documentary? And I said, oh yeah, no, that's not for me. He's like, it's probably not as hard as you think it is. You can keep it pretty simple. And after that conversation, I went to bed and I woke up in the next morning and there it was. The script was in my head. I knew exactly how I wanted this to look like. From the beginning to the middle part to the end, I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like and the pictures that I wanted in it. And I think what really inspired the overall idea of just doing something differently is because so many people started to jump on the emotional intelligence train. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was speaking about it, mindfulness, and I just got really bored. And like, I can't even listen to people anymore just talking about it, because really, if someone is not in that field or even haven't read a book about it yet, there's nothing you can do with it. It's like someone gives you a weird food item and you like, things, I'm not sure what to do with that. Am I supposed to eat that or throw it in the trash? You know, those kind of things. And I noticed from my own studies as a sociologist that our brain memorizes everything in pictures. Everything is just like you put it on a film roll and you store it somewhere in there. And so I wanted something more tangible that helps people understand in a very visual, sometimes in a kind of crazy way in the way we set it up, but in a very tangible visual way, what is going on subconsciously when we connect with other people, and what have we created within our society that keeps us from really connecting on a soul level. And that was inspired by a story when I first came to the US. When I was 18, I came to the US for an au pair year from Germany. And I met this really cool guy at a bar. It was really nice. And the only problem was with that he was Black. And coming from Germany, I didn't have much interaction with people with different skin color, or not even quite that, because Europe is very international, obviously very diverse. But we watch a lot of American movies, and in American movies, Black people are usually portrayed as the gangsters, the ones with the weapons, the bad guys. And so I was very worried, and even my parents like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" I'm like, "But he's really nice. It doesn't quite fit with what we know." And I noticed that really influenced how I related to him, how I connected with him, how I blocked him every time he just wanted to have a deeper conversation. And we're telling that story in the documentary, and to the point where I make in my head the decision, do I want to go out with him or not? And that's when we step into our subconscious. So the story is the first part of it. That is the inspiration to the documentary. And then we're going into the subconscious, into the subconscious mind, and going in through different rooms, what influences that decision of me going out with him or not. And so we film in a really beautiful house, which is awesome. And in different rooms, we talk about different settings like social programming. As the religious and spiritual influence, what is it that influences? Where are we pulling our information from that in the end has us go and say, okay, this is the decision that I make according to what I have programmed in here? And most people are not aware, or they know about it, but they don't know what to do with it, or it's not
Right.
very tangible, right? So my goal is to really make that visual, like bring up a lot of analogies and metaphors. And just through editing, I mean, technology is amazing today. So we can add a lot of stuff in that makes it more visual, especially animation, illustrations. We have amazing people working on this. And then at the end, we also talk about especially the spiritual journey of our emotions. We're looking at history. Why is it so popular to use emotions as a manipulation tool? Ugh, my tongue is going a little faster, or my brain is faster than my tongue. Manipulation tool, and how that has started with the church pretty much. There were a lot of philosophers like Rene Descartes in the 17th century who wanted to dig deeper. How are our emotions connected to our spiritual understanding, to the divine, to God, to our soul? And he was prohibited to continue that research by the Pope back then. And he then moved, I think he moved from France to, I believe, Denmark or Sweden, somewhere Scandinavia. And he continued working, but he had to be very careful. It is said that, it's not quite clear, but the rumor is that he was poisoned after a while, because his information were just too strongly against the church. Because the church, as we know, once Constantinople declared Christianity as the main religion, was very much used to control people, especially emotionally. Like like if you don't tithe, then you're going to end up in hell. That is emotional manipulation.
Right.
And that's, Martin Luther knew that as well. That's why he separated from the Catholic Church, but in the end he just created a very similar spiritual institution. So or religious institution. So in the documentary, we go a little bit into the history, and then we revolutionize how we relate to emotions. We call them the guardians of our soul. We put them in pictures and really amazing avatars. They look awesome. And so people can just really envision what it would look like for them. What would be the perfect picture to envision? For me, it would be a hawk, for example. It's very powerful, that I love to relate to. And then just having those honest conversations with those emotions. What do you want to tell me? What am I learning from this? Because every emotion, due to its vibration and frequency, relates to some trauma that we have created that keeps us from that path toward the connection with our soul, the understanding of oneness with the divine, of oneness with all that is. And in the documentary, have a really awesome stairwell. It's like a really old one, like this spiral down. It's so cool. So we're using that when we talk about the spiritual, to going deeper, going down that spiral into the deepest, into the depth of our subconscious. And so right now, Kelly, our animator, she's working on a really cool animation. I posted a little snippet of it on Facebook. And then we kind of wrap it up as why emotional self-awareness from that spiritual philosophical understanding is so important for our society, and how we can overcome those cultural barriers as well as those social barriers by really being honest with ourselves, partially like really brutally honest, and really wanting to move beyond that, so that we can become one, that we can understand that even if we have a different understanding or different opinion, doesn't mean that we cannot be connected, that we cannot have those conversations, that we do not have to continuously polarize in the extreme directions to survive. And that is really the main message, especially of the documentary, where I want people to become more curious about what do I experience? What are some of the programming that I do relate to, that I have indoctrinated within myself through school, through parents, through what we see around us, that actually doesn't serve a connection with people that are not like me?
Right. You've just taken so many huge topics and combined them and boiled them down in such a great way. I have to pause for a second because I just love the metaphor, the metaphor of the house.
Mhm.
And I think that's just I remember seeing a post quite a while ago where you said we're looking for a house.
Yes.
And I thought, what'd you look for a house for? And it just kind of it made me curious about what was going on with the film. And the fact that you woke up with that, like essentially everything you just said presented in your head in one shot. I mean,
Yeah.
that really just speaks to, and the fact that you can just speak to this so uh, excitedly and just so in the moment of like, you can tell you're living this.
I
And
am.
yeah,
It is.
you're just so lit up with this. And like I said, you just took so many key fundamental things in life that we don't even think about
No.
in society. And I think this has been a lot of our downfall, is that at some point along the line, or maybe we never did, take that time to go deep within ourselves and really find out what drives our actions, what drives our emotions, what drives the way we experience each other in the world. And I'm just kind of sitting here in awe of everything you just said, because I can't wait to see this film actually, because
Me too. I'm
yeah,
excited to see
I
how
mean,
this is going to come together because
you've
really,
already seen it in your head. It's obviously it seems like you've seen it from frame one to frame last,
I
which
have,
is
but it's hard to convey that to the people who are working on it. Like, no, 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 I want it this way or I want it that way. Well, that's technically not possible. So we need to do a little different. So it's very interesting to work on that and to see what is possible and where I may have to shift a little bit in the way I wanted to express it. And especially now with the current situation of the virus, we had to stop filming. We
Mhm.
weren't able to finish everything that we wanted to. And some of it we may not be able to film at all that we really wanted to, because theaters, for example, are going to be closed until I don't know when. So that's going to take too long for us. So we had to come up with new ideas, more creative ideas, and how we can work through some of those obstacles that we have experienced now. And um, it's definitely a fun thing to work on, and it's also can get really frustrating, especially for
Absolutely.
us since I really don't have that kind of budget. And so when you have people voluntarily work on it, it's hard to say, okay, we have to get that done by tomorrow.
Right.
If they still have to work for their rent and their food, you know.
How big of a team do you have?
It's a couple different people. Right now we have the videographer, the cinematographer, copywriter, and the animator. And then we have a couple illustrators, but that's the smaller part of the budget. They're all incredible. They're from Kenya, Philippines. I love working with them. They've done so many projects for me now already. And they're all younger and they really work on it like this. Like, hey,
Right.
I have this idea. Can you do this? Yep, I can do it. So it's really cool to
That's
see. um, it's very global project. Our animator, she's a master student at Purdue
mm-hmm.
here in Lafayette. She's from Taiwan. She's an international student, so that already is really exciting because you can feel the international um, vibration of this. Like it really feels globally, and um,
Well,
I
that's
think it's gonna be good.
yeah, that's so fitting for what you're doing. And
Yeah.
and you mentioned trying to come up with creative ways to do things. I think the one of the words of 2020 is pivot. I mean, it's yeah, I just get pivot all the time, and it's that creativity. I know even in my business, we had to do that on the fly and kind of change almost the entire business model literally overnight.
Yeah.
And with that though comes a lot of great stuff, because it's things that you've never thought of before and how to do things. And I think especially with this project, it is all about thinking different.
Mhm.
To me, it is all about stopping, and it it's not lost on me and we talked about this before, about what we're all going through right now, and how what you're doing relates specifically to what we're going through. And it's, I think the timing of it is interesting, to say the least. Like, what's your take on that?
It's very impeccable. I went into 2020 thinking, well, I'm going to finish this documentary by May. That's going to be great. And then I'll take it to different universities and colleges, and we do screenings at high schools. And then we start having conversations, especially with younger people. They seem to really understand the message. My team is quite young. So it is interesting how they respond to all of that. And then you go into 2020 and you're like, what just happened? Because you never thought, like, there were so many times where I was like, okay, I don't know if people actually will be open to what I have to say, because some of it may be too far out for people, or it might just make too much sense that it already is too scary for some of them. It really resonates, but then they would have to give up certain belief systems and all this stuff. But then this happened. The world comes to a standstill, and lung disease is related to grief, trapped emotions of grief. And pretty much Mother Earth is grieving the way we have treated the environment, how we are continuously destroying everything for a feeling of superiority. We are here to be superior to nature. We can do whatever we want. Eventually, nature will be like, you thought so?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just wipe you out and I will still be here. But through all this, I noticed how impeccable the documentary is at that point, how everything just really fits into the narrative, how divinely guided this whole thing is. Because, well, for one, who knew that I would get an entire team together in 2 weeks and for nothing spent? And we really were able to find the house. Once I just let it go and surrender to it, within 2 hours I had the house. And I'm like, wow, perfect.
Right.
So everything has happened so far in that way. I apologize. In that way. So it's just really fascinating. And then we see, we're looking at grief. We're talking about what are some of the things that we have to let go of, some of the things that we are so attached to, even life itself, that we fall into such a fear behavior. And most of us don't even feel it or see it, that a lot of the responses are very fear-based, when they believe it's just being sympathetic, just being in this together. When if you really were to take a step back, it's all very fear-based. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, then I am in danger of getting sick, in danger of dying, because we're so attached to everything material. And even the Bible talks about it. Don't be of this world, be in it, meaning don't be attached to the things of this world. All of this can just be gone within seconds. What matters is your spiritual understanding of how you are one with the divine power, with God, with the universe, that we have never been separated. And that's what the journey that we're on. And I think this virus brought us to a point where we have to reevaluate what is possible for us. So many people start their gardens now. A lot of people I saw online that said, we're just going to have a garden in our front yard. I wish we could do that. I really want to. But we are HOA. But there's just a lot of shifting happening in how people, actually, I don't need all the food that I always buy. I just need some fruits and vegetables. And, it's just really fascinating to see how a lot of that shifting is happening. But again, at the same time, not enough, because we still see that polarizing conversations, the extremes, to dictating to other people what they're supposed to do so that we all survive, even some of it don't even make sense. Or the other extreme, I just don't care if I put anyone in danger, whatever. Like, it's like there's never really a middle that people seem to find. It's always very polarizing. And I think that's something that the documentary is talking about as well, or speaking on.
Well, we're in a time of shaking foundations right now. So that's the thing that when you were just talking about that, I'm thinking, okay, all of the foundations of society are being shaken, and you're shaking the foundations of so many different ingrained thought processes and just ways of being that we always are, and those are kind of happening at the same time. And I think you're right, we do exist in a lot of fear. The thing that I am seeing, though, is for the first time I am seeing people who, and I really dislike the term like waking up, because I feel like it's so overused. Like everybody on all sides says wake up to something, right?
Yeah.
But I do see not waking up, but an awakening of, oh, hold it, this is what I'm being manipulated into from fear. Like if you just
Yes.
look at the news outlets, they're kind of being stripped bare, and the message underneath it all has a bright light shown on it right now. And
Yeah.
people that I see who used to just repost from CNN and repost from whatever news media they were saying, I'm seeing a shift in how they're talking, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And my hope through works like yours and
Mm.
the emergence of, like, hey, we can grow our own food, we can connect. And I think this distance that we've had to keep, this isolation, has really made it very obvious how much we do have to connect with each other just to be happy and just to live.
Right. I mean, I can't even imagine. I'm not even single. I'm not alone at home. I still have my son and my husband. I cannot even imagine what people go through who are alone
Oh,
at home this entire time. I think
right.
I would go sheer crazy at some point. Um, and I think where I really want people to take a look at is if you feel very strongly about either direction, you know you're operating from a system of bias and prejudice. And a good example is like with the president. I mean, that's the most controversial topic, anyways.
Right. Right.
Um, Either you like him or you don't. But I really support the message behind that I am not against him or for him. That doesn't mean that I can't be against some of the actions he is taking or even for some of the actions he's taking. There are things that I say, hey, I probably would have done that too. And there are other things I'm like, how, why? Like, no. You know, but
I
that
think you're
doesn't mean
describing
that I
most
have to.
everybody.
But it doesn't mean that I have to be against him as a person. I can see him as a person from a compassionate perspective, yet I can call him out on some of the actions that are taken that just don't really seem to be aligned with the environment or with a alignment from a perspective of love, with the unconditional love of divine force. Um, but most people, no matter what he would do, he could literally tell you I love you, they would hear I hate you.
Mhm.
And that's just a bias, that's just a way of how we listen, how we cannot take a step back. And just because we don't like that person, it doesn't mean that everything they ever say is horrible and bad. I don't think there is one person who is completely evil. And I don't even like to put people into category of good versus bad, because I don't believe there are bad people, but there are people that make bad decisions, and most of that is based on trauma. If it's related to generational historical trauma or just trauma that they have experienced through their current lifetime, it doesn't matter. But almost every action that is not aligned with love is a call for love. And we have to understand that even with the president, I cannot imagine, even if I were a person who has no understanding of what's going on, if millions of people come at you every single day, if you just see that in a form of energy, the energy that hits you every day is almost like you're being electrocuted every single day for 24 hours.
Mhm.
And that is hard to stomach, and that's something that we have to still be be aware of that even if someone doesn't act according to our values and morals, doesn't automatically make them bad, because at their core, they are as divine as you are. What has happened through their lifetime, so that ego is pretty much covering up the entire connection to soul, is a different story. But if we don't learn to approach things with more compassion, we will always create the extremes, and you never reach hands if you're on the extreme of either side. You never come together.
Right.
And that is the very hard part for a lot of people, because they have made that reputation about them, that I'm the one who is fighting this current government, I'm the one who is fighting the environment. We hold on to those causes. We don't really want to solve them because it becomes our purpose, our calling. What if suddenly we have not to fight for the environment anymore? If we don't have to fight for a regime change or for a government change, it's suddenly they have nothing to do anymore. There is this the calling, the purpose gone. And that is, I think we need to really shift in how we relate to what we're called to do, which is always a journey toward an understanding of oneness. When we can keep that in mind, you're not attached to any kind of calling or passion that you have, because as soon as you get attached to it, you don't want to let it go. You don't really want to find a solution, because then it's gone. What are you going to do?
And your identity's gone. You get so
Right.
wrapped up in that, and that's your identity. I mean, you
Right.
just said something really quickly that I love, and I'm going to misquote you here because it went by so fast, but you said anything that isn't an act of love is a call for love.
Yes.
And I just really, really wanted to stop and repeat that, because I think it's a great insight and a great tool that we can use to understand other people, especially when they don't align with our values or the way that we would act. And I just love that you said that, because it's the type of thing we sit in judgment all the time. We are judgment machines. We just love judging people
all day,
all day, every day, 24 hours a day. But I think it's a great perspective to say, if somebody's acting in an unloving way, it isn't what's wrong with them, it's what happened to them.
Yes.
What
Yes, I
happened
love
to
that.
them way back in their past, that tumbled them forward into this moment that you're experiencing right now, where they're acting in a way that just doesn't make sense. And I think it's a perspective shift, and it's one of those things that it's really simple, but it's not easy.
No, it's not. And I mean, it took me years to even get to that point. And it took me, I have a special gift where I see everything in color. And that just gives me a different perspective of the world in general, where it's like, oh, that's a pretty pink, or that's a pretty green, I don't really sometimes see the person, I just see the color.
You see words in color as well? My daughter,
yes, words.
It's synesthesia, right? So my daughter has
synesthesia, yes. Words, letters. But in my case, I don't know if that's in general the case, because every case is a little different. The colors change according to the vibration, meaning depending in what context you use the word or the letter or the number, it changes color.
Really?
For me, the color changes according to the emotional state, to the frequency vibration that is something or someone in. So it's constantly changing, but it gives me an advantage, because it's like someone wearing that as their clothes. And when I get a weird feeling, I can just look at the color. I just ask the divine to show me what's the dominant color. And I pretty much know how to communicate with them in a different way that speaks to their heart, to their soul. And
now, have you been disconnected your entire life? Like, as a child and growing up, did you always have this innate ability to see the things that you see and experience the way that you experience?
And I always thought that's normal. I thought everyone can do that.
That's amazing.
I remember saying to my mom that at one time I had like a little snow globe, and I said, sometimes it feels like I can watch the world in a snow globe.
Wow.
I see what's moving. I see how energies are moving. But back then, I grew up in a very conservative little town. Nobody thought of anything supernatural. I mean, oh yeah, that's cool, and then we move on.
Right.
Let's just play something.
Right.
That kind of way. So it never really was anything for me that I considered as something different or something weird or supernatural, because I just didn't think of it that way.
Just
I had to leave the country. I had to step away and really break up with the system that I grew up in to understand who I am.
now, did you know you were doing that at that time?
No.
Or at the time, did it just say, I'm going to go to the States and be an au pair for a year?
I had a prophetic dream at the around of 12, 13, after the wall came down, where I saw myself speaking in front of thousands of people on a stage, but I spoke in a different language. And back then I hated English, to be honest. I'm not a language person. I didn't like it. And I was wondering what language that was, because it didn't sound British English, because that's what we learned in school. And then we had American Bible school students come to our little town for outreach. And when I heard them speak for the first time, it suddenly clicked. And I was 16 at that point, and I was like, USA, but why would I want to go there? That's so far away. I love my family. I loved my home. I wanted to stay in Germany because it's familiar. I knew what to expect growing up, right? But there was just a pull. I cannot even explain it. When I left at 19, right after I graduated high school, I turned 19 that year. Um, I went through security, and my parents later told me, they said, the way you went through that, we knew you wouldn't come back. It
Wow.
just, they always trusted me. They never said no to any of that. Even when I almost got deported or there were some struggles going on, they always had this weird trust. Now looking back, I wonder, because now I have a child, I'm like, they never questioned me once, not once. Even when I got married, they didn't know my husband when I said we're getting married. They never met him before. They just thought, great, we love it. And we have been married for 10 years.
Amazing. Now, have you been back? Do you go back?
I have not. No, I have
never
not.
been back.
No, in the beginning, it was just the money situation. We couldn't afford going back.
Right.
And then I'm not actually a American citizen yet. I'm a resident, legal resident, in case someone is wondering. And so, and then politicals, there was always something that didn't work. We had some health issues a year that, or 2 years, where we wanted to go. And then Jonah came along, and real fast, you're up at 10, 11 years and you didn't even notice it. We wanted to go this October. Now guess. We probably will not be able to go because my dad is getting married again, and we wanted to go in October. And so far it says that most likely Europe will continue to ban tourism until at least September. So it's like, come on, we really had it down. We
Wow.
had the finances to do it. Nothing was in the way. So.
It seems like that kind of runs with your entire life, though. It's kind of like you're on this path, and things are just pushing you or moving you forward in a certain direction.
That's true. And it takes a lot of trust in the journey itself. And I think that is something that really brought even the documentary to life. The way of how I had to trust to have things come together. I mean, who knew that we would be able to create such a fabulous trailer? I never even dreamed of it. And KJ really did an amazing job.
Yeah.
And I can't wait what he's going to do with the documentary itself. And I never even envisioned this for myself. And even my mom is like, I never thought that he would ever do anything like that. He's like, well, who knows? Maybe become famous. Like, I don't think I want to become famous, because you get stuck in another system real fast. But it's just fascinating to me how timely everything is coming together. And with the current situation, how people are more open to hearing a message like that.
I think the timing is incredible.
Yeah.
So one last question for you. So this entire journey lands you at this point. You've got this documentary coming out at some point. We're sitting in this situation right now. We're a couple months in. Fast forward out 6 months, a year, 2. What's your hope for your work?
The hope for my work is I have been doing a lot of coaching over the last years, and I feel like I'm called to step away from that individual work and step more into the public work of it. So, what I really want to do is to finish the documentary, hopefully by July. I really hope we can, because that's pretty much the deadlines for most film festivals, and that's where I want to get it in at first before we take it any further than that. Um, but my biggest goal is to really take that conversation itself to different universities, colleges, high schools, like I mentioned before, and start a conversation. It's just starting a deeper conversation, a more honest conversation about where we're at as humanity, as how we relate to each other. How can we overcome some of those cultural barriers that we have created that just really serve a systematic division to keep those in power that are in power and make them even more powerful. There's just a lot of power hunger present that is driven by greed and ego. Not that ego is anything bad, it's pretty much neutral. It's just the way we relate to it. It's like the curtain in front of your soul. But most people just really respond to it from a greed, selfish kind of way. And that is what we have to break through to create a more sustainable society, worldwide, global society that honors the environment, that honors the world, so that we can live with it and not against it. Like, we dominate you and you pretty much have to follow us in what we want. That means we will have to give up some of our luxury items that we have been manipulated into believing that this is important, that a huge house is important, that 3-4 cars in your garage is important, that debt is okay, consumerism, that you can buy clothes every week. Those things are things that we will have to let go of, the understanding that we need things to feel better. But the more you understand what's going on inside of you, the less this becomes important. I could care less about a huge house as long as I have shelter and I can make it nice and cozy. And I don't even like having my rooms stuffed because it just clutters my mind. So don't go crazy. I'd rather sit in an empty room than have too much in it. As long as I can get around, and what I do get around with, like the car, is somewhat environmentally responsible. That is important to me. And then instead supporting projects that are more focused on humanity, more on social issues, more on environmental issues, and really contributing in that way. That is our goal for the next 2 years. And I do want to write a book with the documentary. Similar to my first book is called The Power of Faith-Driven Success. And the second one is going to be very similar, just different colors, which is then The Power of Connection, in connection with the documentary. So we can actually give something to people. You know, everyone learns differently. So we can say, okay, if you don't want to watch it, you can read it and you can go about it this way. And yeah, and really just have more honest conversations and just really drive it from that perspective. Because knowing from my son, the younger generations are the ones who are going to have the biggest impact on what the future will hold. And I feel like they seem to get it. They seem to understand. They seem to understand the importance of it. And my son is just so incredible. He's 6 and he's so wise, so connected to everything spiritually. He is just guiding me, he's teaching me, and a lot of things that I'm doing is his work. I'm gonna be honest. It's some of his inspiration, some of his work, his words. And I just know if we can give him a platform that says it is okay to think the way you do, and I'm with you and I support you and I don't judge you, oh, they will go places that we could have never even imagined. They're just so much more inclusive, even if we want to make other people believe that they are so exclusive because they're so entitled. I do not see that. I don't know if you just focus on it, that's what you attract. But some of them are just not guided in a way that would support what they innately experience, what their soul is speaking very clearly to them. So they're trying to fit in, they're trying to adapt to the expectations of their parents, to the school system, to society, so they don't feel too weird, too left out, too different, because then apparently according to social standards there must be something wrong with you. And so they're fighting what is being presented in front of them, and fighting what they internally experience and how they experience the world, and it just doesn't make sense to most younger people.
That is, you've just summed up a lot of my work with my project Yours for the Asking. That is exactly what I've been working on for years, is getting behind your children, seeing the world through their eyes, and then putting power behind their dreams, putting power behind what they see in the world, is instead of like, my world honestly doesn't exist anymore. And it just doesn't. The world that I grew up in is, it could have been, dinosaurs roaming the earth back then.
Yes.
It's so irrelevant to my children's and our children's experiences. And
Yes.
it's really our responsibility to be that coach and to be that power behind their dreams. And once you do that, there is just so many different opportunities, not only for your relationship with your kid, but just for the world. I have 3 teenagers here, and they know that if something's important to them, that if they have an interest, that I'm going to get right behind it and say, how far can we take this? And when you do that, that's where all the magic happens.
I mean, I always say my son is 6, so he literally, it feels like he was born with all the worldly knowledge. He just downloads it, he's got it, because he's here for something much bigger, something much greater, that is more spiritually connected to the world. And he is 6, so he should be in kindergarten, but he is finishing 3rd grade math right now. And he reads chapter books like that, 300-page chapter books. And he's just so, when you hear him talk, it's like, where is this vocabulary coming from? When he was 4 months old, his first word was tree. 4 months old, he pointed at a tree and he said, tree. I'm like, what? What? And it's just for me to guide him emotionally through this, because he also doesn't quite fit in with other children. But when you give them the opportunity, and I'm very convinced that he is not a genius, that he is not something better, that every child who has the opportunity to just hear, let's do it. Let's have you just go. Let's not put you into a system that might hold you back. Just go and do whatever you want to do. So many children would just thrive and would be at a similar level he is.
We have another whole podcast to do. Like, this is another whole conversation that you and I have to have. Well, I know that you're running out of time here. I just want to thank you so much. This was just a fascinating conversation. And I will put the links of where to find you and how to support your project. This is a project that should be supported, and you've got my support 100%. Obviously.
Thank you. I know. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for being with me today and sharing all your passion and your drive and such great knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This means a lot to me. That really just... Oh, I've been so overwhelmed lately in a good way from the support, the outpouring love, and the support that I have received. And it's just, oh God, I just sit here and cry in a good way. Like, I'm just so emotionally, like, when you feel so much gratitude that it just comes out of you. That's how I have been feeling the last couple weeks so many times. So thank you so much for your support.
Resonating really, really deeply, not only with me, but with so many people. And that's where all that support's coming from. And that obviously that's telling you something, that your message is very timely, and it's exactly the right time for it. But you in particular are the person to tell this story. And that is so obvious. If anybody has watched this through here and don't get that, then they missed the point. You are the person to be doing this work in this point, and at this point. And I'm just glad to be this little tiny part of it, to be honest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You will be in the credit roll.
Thank you. And we have another whole podcast to do. I'm going to hold you.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can talk forever.
Thanks so much. And
Thank you.
good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you.